Do you know what brokers are not short on? Opinions. We knew we'd get some spiciness from James. Thanks so much for your leadership and being part of this. We're going to get right back into the more technical side of a specification that you've all worked on, that you brought together, that's helping our companies replicate data from a national aggregator of data in RPR. So please welcome one of our RESO directors, Janine Sieja.
Janine, you'd like to know me well, but I've got things inside my head that even I can't face.
Thanks. It's so wonderful to be with all of you this morning. I'm relatively new to RESO. This is my second conference, so I hope that gentleness will, carry through in the next, 15 minutes or so that I'm up here. So let's start with this. A SQL query walks into a bar, goes up to two tables and asks, "May I join you?" So wanted to get a little temperature check of the room. That's good. And then moving on from that, we're going to do a really quick little straw poll. I want to understand, by a show of hands, should we talk about a data dictionary resource known as Entity Event that allows you to boost your replication integrity through sequencing? Or should we talk about hiking in the Sonoran Desert with the cacti? So raise your hand for Entity Event. All right. Raise your hand for hiking. Okay, Entity Event wins, so that's awesome. I see where we're all at, and we're going to do it. So I hope that after this talk, everybody will come away with a better understanding of the power of Entity Event to boost your replication integrity, kind of get you thinking about how this might work in your own scenario. This will be somewhat abstract, and as Sam said, kind of get back into the heart of what makes RESO. So I'm Janine Sieja. I lead the product group at RPR. That's our product developers, product managers, software engineers, QA. I personally am not a technical person, so I come to this from a business perspective, and I'm going to talk to you about a project that we took on together with our strategic partner, ICE, to improve our data aggregation. If anybody in the room is unfamiliar with RPR, and I sure hope that that's not the case, we're a property-centric database nationwide. We blend public records and listing data with a variety of specialty data sets, and we layer all that with tools and reporting to serve realtors. So we're a wholly owned subsidiary of the National Association of Realtors, and we've been around for about 15 years. So I'm going to start out today with just some super high-level definition of entity event and other information about listing aggregation at RPR, and why on earth would we want to blow up what we have and build something new, because that doesn't sound like fun at all. So first, I'm going to quote directly from Data Dictionary. The entity event specification standardizes the way events related to data entities are handled. An entity event refers to any change or occurrence that affects an entity. Standardizing entity events ensures consistent handling, tracking, and communication of changes across different systems and platforms. Wanted to read that aloud. You can look at it on the slide, so we're all kind of aligned around the foundation of all of this. And at RPR, this concept is really relevant because we're aggregating listing data from virtually every MLS, as well as quite a few commercial feeds. So from our perspective, we have to have superior data collection. We don't do aggregation ourselves. We have a partner for that, so we need that to be superlative. We need great synchronization. We need great replication. So in tandem with our partner, ICE, we make up a pretty common use case on the business side involving replication between data producer and consumer. So on to those 3 points. We have, as I said, a lot of listing data. It's really the lifeblood of what we do. We get 98% of the residential listing data in the US from 526 MLSs. We have 800,000 or more commercial listings. So we have a pretty complex system that's been layered over time. Any change in the technology or the approach is pretty impactful, pretty major. So we needed, when we started to think about that system change, we needed to make sure that we got it right. We started rethinking the platform, which was 15 years old. It went back to the beginning of RPR. We started thinking about replacing it because we wanted to get some advantages of modernization. We wanted to be more efficient, and specifically, we wanted to speed up the data flow. We wanted to minimize latency. And third, and most important perhaps for this crowd, is we really wanted to level up what we were doing in terms of data standardization. We were eager to say goodbye to custom mappings and to really just get with the program in terms of standardizing data to the extent possible. You know, we all know that there's always going to be exceptions, that it's work in progress, that standards are not something that you hit the easy button on by any stretch, but that was a North Star for us. We got to work back in 2023 with mapping out what the project would look like with development on both sides. So as all good projects do, this started out with a whiteboard, a lot of sketches and information about how we could architect, you know, on the ICE side as the developer of the Rely platform, the APIs that were needed to make that function. And on the RPR side, the ability to create a whole new ETL to transform data to receive everything that would come from Rely. So quite a long period, actually, of planning on both sides to ensure that, you know, the old measure twice, cut once kind of deal. Fast forward to the completion of the development work, and early this year we began the process, which will be quite a long one, of converting MLSs. So early this year we lit up the first few, and with any luck we'll be done sometime in 2026. Long process, and given that it's a long process and the finish line is way out there, you know, you might ask, well, how does entity event fit in this? What problem does that solve? So today, most data producers who are leveraging web API are using modification timestamps and long polling to synchronize data. And the data consumers are responsible for knowing and coordinating those timestamps across vendors. This can be a difficult scenario. You can frequently need to resync data to resolve timestamp issues or the state of the record that's being changed. And with entity event, you now get an entity event resource and an event log, and you can use that instead as a way to know what has changed. So we saw that as a real opportunity for our situation to leverage this spec, which was still relatively new. I think entity event was discussed initially back in 2019 within RESO, and it was confirmed in 2023. So when we got going with this, it was still somewhat new, looked like a good match and a better solution than what we were doing at the time. So I'm going to very much simplify this by showing a quick animation of how this all works. You get the listing being entered into the MLS, and from there it is flowing into Rely as a listing record that is captured in the massive platform that is Rely, and from there it is collected using our entity event collector on the RPR side and displayed in a way that, aside from the standardization of the data, because the mapping is now different, but aside from that, to the end user in RPR, it is as if nothing has changed, except we hope it got there faster and it's more accurate. So the listing is making that journey with the help of entity event. And the happy ending in all of this is that by successfully incorporating these concepts of entity event, the APIs on the ICE side, the ETL on the RPR side, are creating this bridge. And I know as I describe it, because it's a short talk about this, that sounds like, well, that was easy, but no. I can assure you it has not been an easy process. There are a number of challenges that we've dealt with along the way, some having to do with scale and performance, that it works great for one MLS, but this has to work for all MLSs at once. And so how do you build out your system in a way that will be robust and performant and scale? That's been a major challenge. And then, of course, removing all that custom mapping and peeling back those layers and looking at what is the business logic underneath, what are the needs, what kind of tooling is necessary when you pull all that back. And third, testing, the QA testing on both sides, on the ICE side and on the RPR side. Very extensive, perhaps trickier and more complicated than either of the teams realized going into Lift as well. But I'm glad to report that we're making it happen. The first MLS to go live in the new system was New River Valley in January. We now have a handful more, and we're hoping to pick up speed and velocity so that we can be converting batches of MLSs more quickly. Okay, so I gave you kind of the 30,000-foot view of what the system is and how it works. I'm going to drill down just a tiny bit more to try to emphasize what the big advantages are of this new flow and entity event coupled with entity event collector. I'm going to describe a couple of the business challenges that it solves. So number one, I want you to take away that the beauty of the system is the single query. So again, the beauty of the system is the single query. Entity event has allowed us to greatly reduce the volume of API calls that we're making to the system to identify the incremental updates. Again, traditionally, you're using a modification timestamp method where each resource has to be queried to know what's been changed. But entity event provides a permanent record of the changes in the order that they occurred, and this is a game changer. So I'll give you some simple math. In the old system, any non-entity event system, not necessarily ours, you might be checking every 5 minutes, looking at the property resource, media resource, member, open house, looking for changes. That could be 60 calls an hour. That could be more than 1,400 calls a day. And in the new way of doing things where you're looking at this log instead, we're running about 12 calls an hour, which is fewer than 300 calls a day, which ultimately that'll cover, when all is said and done, that'll cover all MLSs. So that represents a big win. It's just a much cleaner and more accurate way of doing things. In addition, and I'll show this diagram was the flow into Rely, and then you got the flow from Rely into RPR. So relying on the modification timestamp for the incremental updates requires building in an overlap in timestamp queries, and this can cause duplicates. And you also need that sync process. So this system has allowed us to do away with that. Probably many of you in the room are familiar with some of the challenges around deletes and what happens when records are no longer visible. Entity event can help resolve that situation as well with a queue resource. So we're looking in a queue resource to get information to know what action to take, for instance, to delete a record or to make it no longer visible. So we see that as a big improvement as well. Some of the pain points around tracking those deletes go away. We don't have sync jobs. And so just to break it down again, Rely, by combining this entity event on the API side and the entity event collector on the RPR side, is really smoothing things out. The entity event sequence is a part of all this too. It creates a logical timestamp of events. So when a listing status changes or a photo is added, those are represented in a consistent way. It takes out some of the variables around time zone or system time updates and things that can really get in the way and mess up your data. So last point in terms of the improvements of the system has to do with compacting of the entities, again, to make things smooth. By compacting the entity events, you don't get duplicates. It's helpful because, again, those repeats of pulling can represent different changes in the listing that get repeated. We don't have to dedupe because we are compacting those entities. This also comes into play with repulls or with historical pulls of data. Okay, so let's get out of the weeds and go back to some of the interesting discoveries that we made along the way during this project. First of all, so much custom mapping. In 15 years, you can really layer on a lot, and you never take the time to ask yourself, does our product genuinely need all this data? Is it serving us, or is it just kind of been added and adapted and worked around over time? So kind of tearing the Band-Aid off and reconfiguring in a way that standardizes that mapping. For the most part, again, there's always going to be exceptions, especially when you're dealing with commercial data in addition to residential data. It's just been a big reward for us. Another discovery was the kind of, although we knew our system was big and complicated, the magnitude of touching something and how it would change, the ripple effect. It really felt like a heavy load, and I don't mean a payload, for the teams to manipulate something that was like kind of turning a semi-truck around, trying to do a 3-point turn. But we surmounted that, and our third discovery, I would say, is that just like renovating a house, you discover a lot of things that you wish maybe you hadn't uncovered. There were workarounds in the legacy system that weren't as visible until you start to manipulate them. There are, in addition, of course, as everybody who works with MLS data knows, a lot of variations. So we would work with one, initial set of MLS data, and everything would seem fine, and we'd move on to the next set and discover, issues that were not present in the first one. And so it was this trial and error system, especially at the beginning. So a lot of great learning, big development lift. Most of that is behind us, as of 2024. And I would like to call out that we're not the only, kind of early adopter for this approach. There are definitely others in the room. So like shout out to Constellation One, FBS, Rental Beast. There are others here that are doing implementations like this. So I would encourage you, if you're curious, seek people out and understand kind of what they've done and how this has made things better. As I wrap up here this morning, I do want to have a special thanks to our partners at ICE for their vision and their collaboration on what has turned out to be a massive and lengthy project. Neither team could do it without the other. In particular, I want to call out Chris Wade and AJ Suleiman, who are here today. They have been part of that big lift. And again, I would encourage you to seek them out, get more information if your curiosity is sparked by anything that I've said this morning. I'm sure also in the future you'll hear more from ICE about how Rely and this approach to the technology will help improve what they're doing with Paragon and other projects. I know that as we wind down here, we are heading into a coffee break, which I'm sure everyone is keenly anticipating. I'll be up here for a bit. Please feel free to come up and ask questions, or I'm happy to refer you to others to get more information about what we're doing and how it could help you. Thank you so very much for letting me be with you this morning.